The NBA has had a rich history with many amazing... Man, let's just cut the cap. Y'all got nothing better to do. It's my top 50 all-time list. Let's go ahead and get... Alright, let me slow things down a little bit. So today we're going to be covering my top 50 all-time list as of late March 2020. I understand that there will be a lot of comments about very minute details about this list, but I do want you guys to keep in mind that I did incorporate a tier list as well along with my ranking. There are 6 tiers total, and each tier doesn't really have a set criteria to it, like this tier is for people who have a case for the GOAT, this tier is for players who have longevity but no rings. There's nothing really like that, but to make it simple, each tier just accompanies a clump of players that I believe, for the most part, emphasis on for the most part, people can rearrange in whichever way they want and I won't be overly upset. But with that being said, I don't want to spend too much time on the intro. Y'all know what a top 50 all-time list is, y'all know what a tier list is, so let's go ahead and start the madness with spots 50 through 41. At number 50 we have Dwight Howard, 49 Ray Allen, 48 Klay Thompson, 47 Giannis Antetokounmpo, 46 Paul Pierce, 45 Patrick Ewing, 44 Dave Cowens, 43 Kevin McHale, 42 Walt Frazier, and at 41 to close off this part of the list, we have Bob Cousy. Now just in general, the last 5 of a top 50 list is the part of the list that has the most leeway. I do believe that there are more players that belong in this tier than just the 10 players I included, like, you know, the Vince Carters, the Tracy McGrady's, the Ben Wallace's, the Gary Paytons, so on and so forth, just to name a couple. But to highlight some of the aspects of this tier that people might ask in the comment section. Number 1, Giannis. Why is Giannis Antetokounmpo already in the top 50 all time? Well, purely from a talent perspective, Giannis is already a specimen we've never seen before. A 6'11" forward that can legitimately guard all 5 positions. He's already one of the best defenders we've ever seen. He's an extremely effective scorer as well. And peak for peak, right now, there are not a lot of players that are better than Giannis. And assuming that he would have gotten MVP this year, he would be one of the handful of players in history to have back-to-back MVPs on their resume. And there was also a decent to good chance that he would have won Defensive Player of the Year this year in the same season that he would have won MVP, which only 2 players in history have done. Again, despite not having the longevity or a championship to his name, Giannis has already done stuff in his career that not many have done. But again, like I said in the beginning, because it is a tier and the last 5 of a top 50 does have a lot of leeway, I would not be mad if you said that Gary Payton or Ben Wallace should be in there before Giannis. I see that argument. Another question some of you guys might be asking is Klay Thompson. Why is Klay Thompson over Ray Allen? While Ray does have longevity, Klay already has the same amount of All-NBA selections and 1 more ring than Ray Allen, all while being more integral to his team in those championship contention years than Ray Allen was to the 2008 Celtics and the 2013 Heat, at least in my opinion. But again, keep in mind, they are in the same tier, and if someone were to say Ray Allen over Klay, again, I would see that argument and I respect it. I also included some old school players like Bob Cousy and Walt Frazier, who had really good careers for their times and were champions and were great pioneers of the game, however weren't extremely dominant and transcendent enough talent-wise to be higher on this list. Now let's move on to the next 10. At number 40 we have Willis Reed, 39 John Stockton, 38 Allen Iverson, 37 Russell Westbrook, 36 Steve Nash, 35 Jason Kidd, 34 Scottie Pippen, 33 Clyde Drexler, 32 John Havlicek, and at 31 we have Elvin Hayes. Now aside from Willis Reed at 40, this is where all of tier 5 lies within. Again, there's no set criteria for each tier, but I do see players that were very successful second options like Scottie Pippen and John Havlicek on this part of the list, or players that were great regular season performers but weren't the best in the playoffs like Russell Westbrook and Allen Iverson on this tier. I also see a decent amount of players here that just couldn't be the best player on a championship team but still had a great career as a first option and did contribute to a championship team at some point in their career like Clyde Drexler and Jason Kidd. This is the part of the list where longevity does start to matter and your success as a first option begins to matter as well. Now there is one elephant in the room that I want to address, and that would have to be John Stockton. Why is John Stockton only at 39? When you look at the numbers he put up in his career and the longevity that he had in his efficiency, how is he not higher up on this list? Well, one, I just don't think John Stockton was as dominant as his numbers make him seem, and I would say out of everyone in this tier, he is probably the worst first option. Now by first option, I don't exclusively mean as a scorer. What I mean is if you were to build around John Stockton and have John Stockton as your bona fide best player, you would find it extremely hard to build a championship contender around him because of the fact that he's not a great scorer, not an all-time great defender like Kawhi or Gary Payton, and you would realize that to utilize John Stockton as effectively as possible, you would need a player greater than him like Karl Malone or Kareem or something like that to best utilize him, while the players above him have proven to be truly successful first options in their career, and I just can't say that for John Stockton. And combine that with no rings in his career, that would be my reasoning for putting Stockton this low. Now let's move on to the top 30, starting with Elgin Baylor at number 30, Rick Barry at number 29, Chris Paul at 28, James Harden at 27, Isaiah Thomas at 26, Bob Pettit at 25, Kevin Garnett at 24, Charles Barkley at 23, Karl Malone at 22, and David Robinson at 21. Now, the 31 to 50 slots for the most part, people won't really nitpick. Unless you're on YouTube like me. People are just looking for certain names to be included, but the top 30 is where the nitpicking really does start. Also, this is where tier 4 begins. Now spoiler, there are more players within tier 4 in the top 20, so this isn't all of them. This is where the majority of those ringless greats lie. Players that have had tremendous careers, were MVP caliber players, were great first options, could have led some teams to the finals, but just never got a ring in their career like Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, James Harden, and Chris Paul, like those types of players. We also have players who are very close to being in that criteria but got a ring outside of their prime like David Robinson and Kevin Garnett in this part of the list. Now again, for a couple of things to be addressed. Number 1, Bob Pettit. Why is Bob Pettit in here? Because I know a lot of you guys will make fun of him for being a white old school player and laughing at the fact that he's above players like Chris Paul and James Harden, and you'll probably at me on Twitter with footage from the 40s or 50s. I can already see that in my head. Well, just put it this way. Bill Russell played from 1957 to 1969. Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, and Jerry West played from around 1960 to 1973, give or take a couple of years. Bob Pettit played from 1955 to 1967. So he had a lot of overlap between those 4 players who many people have no problem putting in their top 30. He was an 11-time All-Star, an 11-time All-NBA member, a 2-time MVP, a 1-time champion, also being one of just 2 players in history to lead their team past Bill Russell's Celtics and stop him from being a perfect 13 of 13, the other player being Wilt Chamberlain, and put up career averages of 26 points and 16 rebounds. So please read more about Bob Pettit's career if you can, because I believe he is a highly underrated player. Isaiah Thomas's placement as well is a little confusing because he's above Harden and CP3 but below Barkley and Malone. Now I tried to type out the explanation as to why I put him there, but it just took up way too much time, so I'll just chalk that one up as essentially a personal decision of mine because he is a 2-time champion that I still don't think had a better career than Barkley and Karl Malone. But again, because they are all in the same tier, I do see the argument for Isaiah being behind all 4 of those players and above them as well. So we're getting deeper into the list. Now let's go ahead and start the top 20. This is where it gets really interesting. I think this is the most interesting part of the list in my own opinion. Starting off with Kawhi Leonard at 20, Julius Erving at 19, Dirk Nowitzki at 18, Dwayne Wade at 17, Oscar Robertson at 16, Moses Malone at 15, Jerry West at 14, Wilt Chamberlain at 13, Kevin Durant at 12, and Stephen Curry at 11. Now, like I said earlier, tier 4 is continued on this part of the list with Kawhi Leonard, Julius Erving, Dirk Nowitzki, D Wade, and a couple of other players, and also includes the start of tier 3. Now, this part of the list, I can just see it. A lot of you guys will question this part of the list. Probably the biggest one you guys will question is Wilt Chamberlain at 13. Now, I do want to admit up front that Wilt Chamberlain was one of the players in this list that I really had trouble ranking. But if you watch this video of mine a couple years back that I made where I took a deep dive into Wilt's career, I don't think many people realize how much he underperformed in the playoffs. A lot of people attribute his lack of rings simply due to the fact that Bill Russell's Celtics existed and the fact that they were just that good. But if you analyze his career more closely, there were so many times where Wilt legitimately could have beaten the Celtics if he didn't underperform. His teams also had a higher chance of winning than most people think. A decent amount of those years against Bill Russell and his Celtics, Wilt Chamberlain was actually favored. And I just believe that he's underperformed so many times in his career that I truly believe that there are 12 players in history who have had better careers than him, including Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant, which understandably I can see people saying that it's premature to have him this high up on the list. Also, some of you guys might be questioning Kawhi Leonard's placement at 20. Now again, Kawhi was one of those players that I had a lot of trouble ranking because he's accomplished so much in such little amount of time and doesn't have the longevity of a Karl Malone or a Kevin Garnett or even the MVP to his name. But how many players in history can say that they have 2 Defensive Player of the Years, 2 championships, and 2 Finals MVPs on 2 different teams? Not a lot. Again, this is why I made tiers, because if you told me that you believe that Karl Malone or David Robinson are greater all time, again, I wouldn't be mad at all. I see that viewpoint. Again, I guess I'll just chalk up Kawhi to a personal preference of mine, and that's why I put him at 20. But here we go. My top 10 players of all time. Number 10, Shaquille O'Neal. Number 9, Hakeem Olajuwon. Number 8, Tim Duncan. Number 7, Larry Bird. Number 6, Kobe Bryant. Number 5, Bill Russell. Number 4, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 3, Magic Johnson. Number 2, LeBron James. And number 1, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. There it is, my top 10 players of all time. What many of you guys have really been anticipating. But hopefully, due to the tier system I placed and my explanation throughout this whole video, you guys would realize that the top 10 is not really an exclusive club, like a tier of its own. Because as you guys can see, tier 3 does bleed out all the way to 13, and the top 10 alone includes 3 tiers in itself. To address a couple of things that again you guys might be questioning, number 1, Bill Russell. Now, Bill Russell is a player on this list that I would not be mad if he put in tier 3, because I honestly see the argument for him being in that tier. But I do believe that he is more in the top half of this top 10. I can make a whole video dedicated on him and why he's underrated at this point, which I actually have. I'll put the link in the description. But long story short, my case for him being in this tier is the fact that he's one of the best winners in sports history, if not the best, and did more for the game and pioneered many aspects of it than most people realize. From just a simple outlet pass and creating the fast break to simply jumping to block shots. These are stuff that Bill Russell was instrumental in pioneering. But again, I do understand the weak era argument and the fact that he's probably the worst offensive player, maybe in the top 50 period. But the fact that he was as successful as he was, and the fact that he was winning MVP year in and year out, and people were having discussions between him and a guy that was capable of averaging 50 points a game, in my opinion, just shows how great of a leader he was, more so than how overrated the era was or how overrated he was. The second thing I want to address is Michael Jordan being in his own tier. I guess with this decision, it's pretty obvious that I believe MJ is the greatest of all time. The reason that I put MJ in his own tier is because I just believe every argument I've seen for MJ not being the greatest just isn't a good one. I just don't think there's ever been a player that truly exceeds the career that MJ has put together. MJ has a career that is the closest thing you can get to perfection. 6 rings and 6 finals MVPs, no game 7s in the finals, 5 MVPs, a defensive player of the year, a complete game, led the Bulls to a 70+ win season, not 1 but 2 3-peats, was on one team for a majority of his career, has the flashiness in his game, has the fundamentals down packed, had just as great of an off-court impact on the game as anyone in history, if not the greatest impact on the game. I mean, the guy literally did everything. And until someone comes with a career that is legitimately comparable to all of that, I'm sorry, but I personally believe MJ is in his own tier. But I do simultaneously believe that the gap between him and the guys in tier 2 isn't astronomical as well. But there you have it. I know it's been on the screen for a while now, but this is my top 50 greatest players of all time list, in order with tiers included. Go ahead and take your screenshots right now, post it on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you gotta do. As a matter of fact, let me add a drop shadow to it, add some contrast between the boxes in the background, spice things up a little bit. And you know what, if you're gonna post it on IG, bow, I got you with the 4x5 version. You know what, let me flip it on the screen right now if you're on mobile, get the best quality picture out of it, you know, out of a YouTube video. Go ahead, spread it around if you want to, talk about it. I don't care, I know it's gonna be talked about somewhere. Again, I do want to emphasize that there's a lot of leeway in this list, and I'm not really strict about the rankings of the players within their little clumps. If you think Shaq is over Akeem, cool, you know, I see it. If you think KG is over David Robinson, Karl Malone, and Charles Barkley, I see that as well. I just thought this would be a great video to do right now. Since the NBA is suspended and we do have a lot of time on our hands, leave a like on this video if you liked it, it helps out a ton. Let me know in the comment section what album you think inspired the thumbnail for this video. Watch these 2 videos on the screen if you haven't already. But with that being said, everyone stay safe out there, and I'm out. Peace.